We'll kick off because we've got a cracking session today. I normally do my rabbit in terms of what's happening in the economy and the rest of it, but my guess is that not a lot's changed. Some of the figures seem to be quite encouraging out from the US, which means that they may well have bottomed out and already be starting to lift back, which is good news because the US tends to lead the world. And stock markets are going all over the show, which just tells you what investor sentiment is. But today it's up significantly. Yesterday it was down, so who knows? But the reality is we're easing out of lockdown, depending on the sector you're in. So as we know, this is an unusual recession because of it's very sector specific. But the bottom line is we just got to get on with it, haven't we? So what we have today is we have Oliver with us, Oliver Hill. Oliver Hill is somebody that I've known for probably 2 or 3 years now, I think, Oliver, isn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, probably goes back to my days brief days in BNI, which is about, 3 or 4 years ago.
Goodness me, yes, it probably does. So, actually, we've known each other a long time then. Now, Oliver will explain a lot more about what he does in a second, but really fortunate to have him here today. What we're going to do is we're going to solve all the world's psychological problems in the next hour. All the self-limiting beliefs, all the imposter syndrome, we're going to get to the root cause of all of this. And Oliver's going to explain a way out because he's the guru.
Yeah, no pressure, brilliant.
No pressure whatsoever. Tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of what do you do now, Oliver?
Okay, so well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Thank you for everybody turning up and listening. I was quite interested in Neil sent a question out asking people what they thought. And some of the feedback was that very kindly, people thought that I was quite a nice guy and they enjoyed having me around. But they also had no idea what I did, that's quite interesting feedback. It's quite useful for me to know. So in a nutshell, the best way I can describe it is I help people become better versions of themselves in either their professional or their personal life, because both cross over. And I am a coach, but I'm not a massive fan of the terminology coaching. And I've talked to Neil about this quite a lot, because the bar for entry into coaching is incredibly low, which means I can call myself a coach if I want to, and that sort of makes it so. But what it does mean is if people have had an experience of coaching, there's no guarantee as to what standard it's been. So being that the bar is so low, but the bar for success is quite high, that always makes me a bit nervous of the terminology of coaching. So really what I do is I don't come to tell people anything, but over my years, especially sort of last 5 or 6 years, I have learnt a lot about the way I am, the way I have behaved, and that has impacted me a lot. And I've begun to realise a lot of information is out there that people just should know about and have a think about, because it will impact the way that they approach daily lives. It will affect how they feel anxious about things. It will affect how they feel in terms of negativity or positivity. And the wonderful thing that I've become so quick to learn is that we have total control over how we feel about everything. So what I do is work as quickly as necessary to help people see that difference and make those changes to better themselves and have a better quality of life. Ultimately, it's about making people happier. Occasionally that moves into a more sort of corporate world, and I have some tools that I use because it's much more difficult to intensively coach a large number of people. So I have a few tools that I point people towards. There's a few books that I recommend that people look at. So yeah, really the simplest way to say it is if someone's struggling with something, or if someone wants to improve on something, I help them. I don't consult them. I don't train them. I just help them effectively get out of their own way, because normally they've got everything they need. They just don't see it because they've made up these rules, or they've put up these blocks, or you've used some of the terminology, self-limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome, all these things. They're all the same in effect. They might come from slightly different areas, but they all point to the same thing, which is our thinking getting in the way. So that's a bit of a ramble, but I hope that gives a bit more clarity.
No, it's a good ramble, Oliver. And I guess one of the things that I know you and I talk a lot about in terms of is why as human beings do we focus on weaknesses rather than strengths? So there's a temptation, isn't there, always to beat ourselves up and think of the injustices and that's happened to me, and we're always focusing on the negative and the weaknesses. Why do we do that?
I see that This is a great question, because there's certainly a potential for human nature to do it. We have the very basic instinct of, flight or fight. So if in the past we were running away from like a wild animal and so forth, there'd be a decision to fight or fly away. And over time, the thing that we're scared of has changed. And most lately, it's about feeling stupid, or looking silly, or having insecurities about believing in ourselves. But also, I take that way of things, but I also look at the way that we're brought up, the way we're educated. And if you think of the vast majority of working environments, certainly 20 years ago, they're getting better now, but 20 years ago, if you had appraisals, it's very often that the way the system would work is you'd write up how you thought the year had gone. So you have the opportunity to be positive about yourself. This is a bit crude, but it was then probably your manager's job to tear that down and look at all the areas where you failed, where you need to improve, where you're weak. So rather than building on all these things that you're really good at, your so-called strengths, your natural talents, we look at all the things you're naturally not very capable at and think, well, you need to be better at that. You need to be a well-rounded person. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take you away from all the things that you're naturally good at, and we're going to start focusing your attention on all those things that you're not naturally competent for, that you don't enjoy, that we know there's probably other people who are better at, but you need to be a well-rounded person. And it just isn't. I passionately believe you are going to struggle to become a well-rounded person, but you can become a well-rounded family unit. You can become a well-rounded team, a well-rounded business, a well-rounded friend circle, because you have complementary skill sets and talents. And the sooner we move away from trying to get everybody to be perfect at everything, and we look at people on their individual skill sets, because we're all different. I know it sounds cliche, but we literally are so different. That's when we're going to start realizing that this is where the negativity comes from. Because if you live in that world, you're always going to think you're not good enough at something, because it's very easy to find something that you're struggling with. And you're not going to, no matter how much you want to, you're going to really struggle to focus on correcting that, because it just doesn't come very easily to you.
Although there's some logic, isn't there, to saying, if I identify some of the things I'm weak at, if I improved them, then my whole game improves. So the sum total has improved. So I can understand where it comes from.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's about moving it from fixing weaknesses to managing them. And it's a subtle little shift. So yeah, being aware of it is good. Maybe doing some work to improve in that area is okay, especially when your resources are limited. So if you're a small company or a small team, you're not going to be able to hire in all the people that you necessarily need to fill those gaps. However, there is still going to be an opportunity to look at that. Don't just assume that you need to be doing these things. Have a look around. I mean, the big thing that seems to have fallen by the wayside is communication. And I often use this in client sessions where I talk about the program, The Secret Lives of 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. I don't know if people will have watched that. But it's a perfect example of how simple life can be, because when you look at them, they have relationships that they forge very quickly, and then they fall out very quickly. They tell each other when they're upset with them, when they're angry. And that is a skill that we're born with. But through our sort of teens and in our early adult years, we just move further and further and further away from being able to be honest and communicate how we feel about things, and tell people what they're doing is hurting us, or that we enjoy what they're doing, and we wish they'd do that more often. We lose that power of basic communication. And I do believe it's subconsciously trained into us through education and later in work, because I do hear what you say about the weaknesses, but ultimately, if you're spending time doing things that you're not naturally strong at, it's never going to be as good as if you spend the time doing the things that you absolutely excel at. It's just going to be a lot harder for you.
And I suppose that's, as you say, it probably starts from the education side, where we try and put people in a box, don't we? And the education says you've got to pass so many GCSEs or A levels and then go on to university, and it's all learning by rote, really, to a large extent.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting reads out there about the education system and how it could. I don't want to beat it up, because there's obviously a lot of people who have a lot of success through the system. There's also a lot of people that don't suit it. So outside of this, I'll happily mention some books to people that I can put to you that you can send out in an email, which will just get people maybe thinking about how you learn. Because again, another problem with the way that we then fix our weaknesses is we tend to go on some form of training. But if the aftercare isn't in place, then the risk is that you go off and have amazing training from fantastic teachers and providers and facilitators. You know, I'm not here to rubbish any of that. But if you don't get to then apply it very, very soon afterwards, most of it's gone very, very quickly. It's alarmingly quick for most of us how soon we forget. The vast majority, 95% of what we learn in a session is gone within a week, you know.
It is staggering, isn't it?
Yeah, it made me feel better because school was a bit of a struggle for me. So I was like, oh, well, that's why. That's all right.
Although you were very good at sport, weren't you?
Yeah, sport was my thing. Yeah, again, you know, it's an area of certainly at the time when I was at school, it wasn't encouraged. But my area, that was an area of strength and focus for me. It was something I excelled at, but was never really nurtured in my environment, which is a shame for me. Because again, with something like that, the assumption is, well, sport's not a career. But you look at it now, you don't have to be a good sportsman or woman to be, have a career. There's so many other attributes towards it. And if someone had just maybe had a little chat with me about it and thought, well, yeah, we could obviously focus on this area, but you know, what are you actually good at otherwise? Because you know, what's your safety net? And yeah, I'd love to be into sports psychology now. I'd love to be doing this with, and it may be something I've talked to you, Neil, about doing more of. But yeah, I'd love to work with sports people. With what's going on up here.
So with what's going on up there then, imposter syndrome is something that people talk about a lot of the time. Where does that come from? Because I think most of us suffer from it at some point or other, or maybe it's a basic human emotion. But it does seem to really hold people back at times, doesn't it?
Yeah, it ultimately comes from, there's many different people who would have sort of different explanations for it. But for me, I feel a lot of these things all come at the same point. And this is all down to self-assurance and self-belief. And it's also about getting comfortable with fear. So it comes back to that point I made earlier on. There's a coach who I admire a lot called Rich Lipton. And he talks about being fearless, which when you first hear it, you're like, what the hell does that mean? Be fearless. What on earth do you mean? But it means when you go into something, just being comfortable, you're going to give it your absolute 100% best. And it doesn't matter what happens. And it's born out of this idea of striving to fail. And we hear quite a lot of, you know, entrepreneurial gurus talking about you've got to keep failing, got to just keep failing, got to keep failing. But what they really mean is you've got to keep doing things. You've got to stop being deliberate. And then the bit where we tend to fail, and the only time you can fail, is when you don't listen to the feedback that life gives you. So you go off and do this thing and it makes you feel really uncomfortable, but you've done it, but it didn't work. And then you think, well, I'm not going to do it anymore because it felt really clicky, really clunky, felt really uncomfortable. And I've had no results from it. So my feedback is I'm just not going to do it. Instead of looking at, well, why? Why did it feel weird? Why didn't it work? Did it really not work? Or was it just that no one called me about the thing that I was trying to sell them? Or I've not had any follow-ups or what have you? And you take social media as a perfect example. If a lot of us are proactive on social media, and I can relate to this in my early days in particular, you put a post out there which you think is valuable and no one likes it, no one shares it, or no one makes a comment. You're like, oh, what's wrong? Well, that didn't work. Oh, it's rubbish. Social media is rubbish. I'm rubbish. No one likes what I got to say. And you will believe that. There's no facts around that, because have you put anything into the advertising? Did it fit the algorithm? Was it a bad time of day? And I've had times where I've recycled social media and it's absolutely flown the next time I've put it out there, which just showed me that I've made up a load of assumptions, a load of thinking that's going on in my head, which has got no basis of fact. I've just made a decision. And therefore, I've decided and deemed that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. And I remember when we talked earlier about moving onto the networking circuit, and I remember coming into a room with loads of other coaches who've been around for a long time, and immediately thought, oh God, there's that guy and this person, and she's there. I this can't. I'm in the wrong place. That was the thinking that's going on in my head, and I had to fight through that, go in there. I now look at that, and some of these people reach out to me to have conversations and talk. They're kind of like, they see me as a friend or as a potential partner and all these things. But if I'd have believed myself back then, I'd have walked out and never, ever continued doing what I'm doing now, because I would have believed what I'm saying in my head. And that's the thing. We have conversations in our mind every day, and that's okay, because that's going to happen. But we don't have to believe it. You know, there's loads of thinking that's, if you imagine a scene where over your head is just a load of clouds going along, and replace those clouds with thoughts, there's loads of negative ones flying around all the time. And every so often you'll grab onto one, you'll focus on it. But you don't have to spend your time thinking about it, because there's also some positive thoughts up there, some stuff to back you up, but they're just sometimes a little harder to find. But if you grab onto the first thought you find, it's most likely a negative one. And you can then believe that that's real, because we will have an experience and we will believe it's real. And I coin an example that it's quite it's a traumatic one, but on 9/11, in the terrible attacks on the Twin Towers, there are people who believe they were there because of the stuff that they've seen, the media that they read the next few days and all this, and they vividly remember seeing stuff happen. But we then check and they aren't there. They were in a different location in the country, but because they'd seen so many things, they had in their head made themselves believe that they were there. So if someone can do that, just imagine what you can make yourself believe about yourself. And if you want that to be, or not want, but if you program that to be negative, or that you're not good enough, that's probably what you're going to believe. You know, and it comes down to, some people can do that on their own, but some people need help by dealing with the accountability that's needed, really, to not do that. Does that make sense? It's a bit of a complex issue.
It is, isn't it? And if you're thinking, and then I like your analogy of the clouds, because there seem to be more dark clouds than there are light ones. Yeah. And that seems to be the human condition, doesn't it? Or some of us. I remember listening to a very good biography of Churchill, and Churchill said he woke up every morning as if he had a champagne bottle in him waiting to go off. So extremely positive, despite some incredibly difficult periods that most of us would never be able to cope with. It never occurred to him. There were very, very few instances where he was depressed. People talk about him being depressed and the black dog, but he didn't have them. So some of us seem to be predisposed to feel chirpy in the mornings, and others not.
I think what it is, some of us are just, whether they're predisposed or whether they've learned early on how to perform at their best, it doesn't really matter. I don't know which one it is, but what those people will do, whether planned or accidental, they will have set up routines and habits and actions that head them in this direction. But it's not possible for me to say, go and be positive, do these positive things today, and tomorrow everything will be okay. It is hard work doing this, remaining positive. However, if you do that hard work and it becomes habitual, the things like getting up every morning and writing down something positive in a gratitude journal, for example, it becomes a habit, and you start the day off on a positive note straight away. That miracle 6-minute morning that you hear about, or doing some exercise, taking dogs for a walk, doing some yoga, having some meditation, all these things are really easy to do. But as we know from the book that we love that puts it so well, In the Slight Edge, it's so easy not to do it. But these people you're talking about are likely, and I don't know so, but they're very likely to have formed good habits and positive habits. They will have had more successes, or they will have learned from their failure, or they thrive on failing so that they can learn from it and be better. And therefore, it's very hard to be negative, because they don't see any fears and they will just attack it. So I suppose that's fight versus flight, maybe. I don't know. Yes. But
it's interesting reading some of the comments. Hopefully you can see those as well, Oliver. Good one from Guy saying, being programmed with being born with 2 fears, fight and flight. I guess that's what you're referring to there, Guy. Chris, using negative thoughts as a balance to slow your positive thoughts down. But you're a very positive bunny, Chris. Good balance. And James, often the most confident are the ones that aren't actually. Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? But self-awareness is we meet people all the time whose really self-awareness is off the scale in terms of they have no idea of how they're coming across or their competence levels. And they often are very confident people, aren't they? Yeah.
And James in particular, and Chris from a different way, is already talking there about strategies that you can put in place. There's a really important point here, and one of the things I'd encourage people to do is later on is have a look at my podcast series. It's free. It talks about all these bits and pieces, and I believe it's valuable. And I say that with confidence because most of it's come out of what I've learned. It's not me telling anybody anything. It's important information, but it's about no one is right and no one is wrong. This is a very, very hard concept for some people to grasp. But when somebody does something extreme like kill somebody, at that moment in time, the vast majority of us would look at it and think, well, that was wrong. But at that moment in that time, for that split second maybe only, it was right to that person. It felt like the right action for whatever reason. And when you move out of thinking people are right and wrong and begin to understand, well, there's a reason for it, then you begin to look and realize there are strategies. You have control over the way you think. It doesn't mean that it was a good thing that they've done. It doesn't mean it was helpful. It doesn't mean it was positive. But if you can move away from judging things about being right and wrong. So when you're looking at strategies, you can't get it wrong unless you don't do anything, because then even then you're not wrong. It's just a decision you've made. But the likelihood is you're going to head off in a more negative direction. But if you just do things and work at them deliberately and listen to the feedback that you're getting, sometimes you'll stumble across some stuff that really works for you. More often than not, you're like, no, that didn't quite work. I need to take that on board. I need to find out why, and I need to tweak it. But the people, again, that you were talking about earlier, Neil, are focusing much more often on how they can improve things, how they can be better.
And how do you stop then the feedback, the negative one, from being highly personal? Because we know from the session we had with Matt, and we all know from selling, that people dislike selling because of the fear of rejection more than anything else. Is they take, even though you can try and be logical about it and say, I know this isn't a rejection of me as an individual because they don't know me, etc., etc. It's not how it feels, is it?
No, if we were to, so obviously there's quite a lot of intense work that you may have to do on a subject like this. I'm not going to be too simplistic and say that you can just fix it just like that, but there is a way to think about this slightly differently, and I talked about a bit about it earlier, about being comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. So if you're generally looking to push yourself, the likelihood is, if you want to improve and you want to grow, there are going to be times when you feel uncomfortable. But if that at the moment makes you think, oh, recall back in, I don't want to do that, I don't like that feeling, if you're not searching for it, then the likelihood is you're going to avoid it. And I can relate to the selling thing. It's a struggle that I had for many years when I had misunderstood what it was. And Matt actually, I owes a lot of credit to Matt to help me readjust what selling, as it were, is. And if you can just change that round, so you can start thinking, well, I'm searching for the uncomfortable feeling, because I know if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm doing something different. I'm giving it a go. And if I can then, first of all, listen to the feedback that I get, if it's unsuccessful, great. And again, Rich Lipton, like I say, one of the coaches I love, he loves getting a no, because it means, A, I've gone out and asked and it's not right for them. So that's brilliant, because I've done the thing that I wanted to do. I've reached out to someone that I think I want to work with, and they've made a really quick decision by the way that I have informed them that they don't want to work with me. Brilliant. We can move on. I can go to the next one. And when I read that in his book, The Prosperous Coach, I said, wow, because I would never go off and look and think to ask 100 people if they want to work with me and 99 of them say no. Back then, before reading that and understanding, I'd be like, oh, that's it. I am rubbish. The limiting beliefs kick in, the imposter syndrome. But actually, no, it would just be a case of I am narrowing down what my profile looks like of the people that I want to work with. I think it's them, but we never fully know until we've absolutely nailed it. And then now it's easy for him to strike up a conversation. He gets slicker at it. He can do it at a much quicker time. But back then, when he was really struggling and he barely had any money to his name and he'd made a decision to become a coach and it seemed like a terrible idea, that strategy took some balls. But now he just swears by it. And I think he was inspired to do it by another coach. But I love that way of looking at it. He went out searching for the no's. And if your daily target is to get 10 no's, brilliant. Because if you get a yes, what a happy accident. And weirdly enough, when you have those conversations, as I've started to find, the yeses, they come when you're not looking for them. Weirdly enough, this morning, I've had someone that I used to work with many years ago, didn't know that I was a coach now. They've started following me on social media not that long ago, and they've just reached out, and we're having a call on Monday because they want, and I thought it was just a catch up, how you doing? And he said, oh, no, it's not really. I mean, I'd love to catch up, and I do care about what's happened to you in your life, Oliver, but actually it's professional. I've seen your videos, and I didn't try it that. It's just being deliberate, being out there and not having too much on it. It's a nice example, and it sort of reassures me as well that the way Matt's trained me is working, because you still have your doubts, but
yeah, of course you do. I mean, yeah. And I think Chris put a point up saying it's okay to be anxious, which is what you're saying. I guess in Chris's case in particular, if you're going into a martial arts situation, you want to feel nervous rather than overconfident. You just need to be just entirely focused, but it's okay to feel anxious and uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's how you use these things. So if we're talking about there, that uncomfortable feeling, being anxiety, being on edge, well, I would imagine, I don't know, with martial arts, we're going on other sporting environments, being on edge is probably very useful, as long as it's not taking you down this path of, oh, this guy's bigger than me, or, they're faster than me, or they've won their last 10 fights, or, take me, I played a lot of golf. And if I look at somebody who's got a better handicap than me, I could immediately assume that they're better than me, but doesn't necessarily make it so. And there's loads of underhand tactics you can bring to the table as well. So
that I can well believe. So self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Why do we limit ourselves? Because
it's easier.
Is it?
It's easier. It's easier to say I try. So you will know I have some pet peeve words that roll out, Neil, and others may not know about them. But again, if you check out the podcast, there's a 5-6 minute podcast on this, and we use one of the words. It's my number one hated word. I still use it, so bad me. But is try. So we allow ourselves to self-limit what we can do by saying, "Oh, well, I tried. I did that running thing. I did it for 3 days solid. Then I fell off the wagon. But, I tried it. This wasn't quite for me. Rubbish." You definitely could have done it. You don't need to try. You need to do. You need to get rid of words like try, can't, won't, because they're all excuse words. They let you off the hook because you can feel a bit better about the decision you've made, because you believe in your head that you did give it a fair go, but you simply didn't. And when that word try comes out, if you can recondition yourself for that to be a trigger to oh, what am I trying to keep myself out of here? What did I claim to have tried to do? Did I? And on reflection, did I really try, or did I? No, I probably didn't, because did I do it for 90 days solid, or did I do it for a full week, or did I follow the exact instructions that were encouraged? Or why haven't I enjoyed it? So yes, I didn't enjoy that thing, but could I replace it with something else? We won't have done those things if we use the word try. So yeah, that's.
Can you not end up though reinforcing the fact that I told you I was rubbish? I tried it and I didn't really try it. I thought I was going to, and
yeah, well, exactly.
If you end up in this self, it just reinforces the fact that I'm rubbish.
We can get into what we call a bit of a thought spiral, and spirals, if you think about them, they're always going down. So it's not that you want to believe that. I can't think of the right words, but so I don't mean it quite like it's a choice that you're choosing to believe that. But if the easy option is to believe that because that's how it's gone and that's why my life's crap, or that's why the business isn't working, or that, if we want to believe that, that's a lot more comfortable than recognizing that perhaps we haven't put the effort in that we need to do. And honestly, that's a lot of what it comes down to. There are going to be exceptions where people have had, some traumas in life which are also getting in the way. And I don't do therapy, and I would always encourage people to have a look at that. I have some views on it, which I'll happily talk to people about another day, because I do believe you can get through this without such things, but I wouldn't want to put it out there as a recommendation. So I don't want to belittle certain people's issues that they've got going on. I don't want to say, oh, it's easy. It really isn't. None of this stuff is easy. And if you're struggling with it now, it will feel as real as it ever did. But I can promise you there are ways that you can address all these things through just reviewing your thinking and the actions you take, because it is a choice. It's hard to understand sometimes how it can be, because it really feels like stuff is happening to us from the outside, and there's influences outside of our control that are bearing down on our feelings, but it isn't the case. I think I love an example that another coach I love, Michael Neil, talks about, where he gives experience of the people going, or a group of people going to the cinema and experiencing a film. You say you've got a cinema full of 100 people and they've all gone to see the latest Star Wars movie. They've all gone in seeing the same movie. They've all gone in and seen it from pretty much the same angle. I appreciate they've got slightly different seating positions, but in the main, they're having pretty much the same experience of life. But outside, if you were to catch them all straight off cold and ask them without talking to anybody else what they have experienced of that film is, most will be completely different. Some will be slightly different. And if you start thinking about that, well, that's actually how everything is. Everything out there going on outside, we have an interpretation of, which we can control, and we can choose to look at things and have them and decide that they're a negative, bad thing, or we can look at the exact same action and think, actually, no, that's really positive because now I know what I don't like, or now I know what upsets me, or now I've got an opportunity to speak to somebody. It's a total choice then as to whether you think you recoil back and think, no, that's why I don't do these things, or it's like, okay, no, that didn't work. Let's go again. And it sounds like I'm being a bit of a motivational hype sort of speaker here, but that's not my intention. I don't want to be sort of dressing it up as, this isn't a Tony Robbins scenario. It just is a case of have a think. When was the last time you did that, where you just decided something that as an outside influence had a direct negative impact on you, and ask yourself, did it really? There is no straight answer. It's just, what's the thinking that's going on up there?
And that's often true when you reflect back on things, isn't it? And I guess we all speed read to a certain extent, and you see an email come through which is a bit arsey or a bit narky, and it's very easy to react and think, bloody hell, can't believe I've just read that. But then you read it again the following day and you think, actually, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I think, we seem to very quick to jump on the bandwagon, aren't we?
Yeah, well, there's this weird thing. I mean, I had it weirdly this morning where you miss words. I forget it right now, but there is some research around this, but you can read it one time and miss a key word. And I did it. I can't remember what the word was, but in the old me would have seen the email that I'd read it the way I had and just fired off. Because that's how I used to be when I was a lot younger. I had some leadership issues. I was more than happy to do it and very, very aggressive with it, which is part of how I sort of came down this route, began to sort of change my life. But then I now just pause. If anything makes me feel funny, I pause. I also make sure that I don't read it then. I think, okay, that needs to be parked. I need to come back to that because that's made me feel odd. I don't know what that's about. So I don't want to respond while I'm in that zone, and I'll go back to it. And this time it's a good job because not only did I need to review it, I need to read it properly, because the key word that was missing, I wish I could remember what it was, completely changed the style of the email. Plus things are lost in the email is evil. I don't like emails at all. They are you talk about excuses, especially in a work environment, the amount of people that send an email and think, done, dealt with. Oh, anyway, but that's the thing for another day. That's more for the corporate conversations. But email.
But it's a great strategy you just did as a throwaway line there, Oliver. Which is, if it feels odd, leave it, and try and let the thoughts settle. Because in looking some of the chatter, people like Guy are saying, actually, we don't really understand our feelings, and it's very easy, I guess, to put labels on them as I'm doing now. But the reality is, sometimes you just need to let them settle, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. And it's, again, where are they coming from? So it's a great point, Guy, because we don't, vast majority of us don't understand them at all. I think you've got to be up there with the Buddhist monk's strong meditation, where you begin to possibly get an understanding. The thing that's really important is not to make decisions based simply on that. I'm not saying don't go with your gut. If you get a strong feeling of it's the right thing to do, I'm not saying turn that off. But on the flip side, if especially you've got something you usually might have some detrimental effects, I just always think it's a good tactic to deploy and pause and just consider it. But the challenge is, where's the feeling coming from? Because if you really analyze it and go down, and I know you call it chunking, really, you go down level after level after level, we begin to realize that it's not coming from what we thought it was. And it can be a number of things that have triggered it. We're very, very, very prone to making assumptions, and we're very, very prone to living our lives on expectations that we either have of ourselves or of other people. And if you live in that world, there's only two directions you can go. You or that person meets those expectations, which is a very flat, neutral feeling, or you fail to meet those expectations, because you can't succeed in going above and beyond, because if someone's done something, then you expected it of them, or you expected it of yourself. But if you have agreements in place and you go searching for agreements with yourself and with other people, when they go above and beyond, then suddenly that's a bonus. It feels good. But if you're sitting there with uncommunicated expectations of other people and vice versa, they have them of you, it's gonna get messy. It can be quite toxic sometimes, and we do it all the time, work and at home, where we just assume, understandably, because some of the stuff we assume and expect of people is pretty basic. But if we haven't spelt it out and they are just simply unaware and oblivious, no one likes failing to meet expectations, and we don't like people failing to meet ours. So it's about where are those feelings coming from, and you can definitely do more to spend time yourself analysing why you feel the way you do before you act.
And
it's a choice.
It's a good point. So is it healthy to have very low expectations of people then? I know we talk about normal for Norfolk and people take it. Yeah. And I guess they say normal for Northumberland or similar.
Yes.
But it's actually quite detrimental, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that depends how much effort you're prepared to put in. If you are not prepared to put the effort in to seek these agreements with people, then I think that is a better place to be. If you want a quick strategy, I would always say plan for the worst and hope for the best. A lot of people have a world where they hope for the best and they don't plan for the worst in any way, shape or form. And that's quite dangerous. So if you're there expecting good things of people and you haven't communicated it and you haven't reached any agreements, it would be a little risky to be incredibly positive about their natural instincts to do what you expect of them. So it's about, if you're not prepared to reach out to them and have an agreement, then yes, I would have low expectations. What I would do is challenge you and say, that's not a great place to be. And if you've got expectations of people, have a think, have I ever articulated what that is? I'll give you the most stupid example. When I first came across this is my son at home. At the time of this, he was a teenager, and I decided as a teenager he needed to contribute more. I had no chat with him about it. I just decided I was fed up with him playing on his Xbox. So I decided and told him that he was going to do the bins. And in my head, the bins was you do the recycling and the general waste every day, and you make sure the bins go down every fortnight, whichever one it is. All in my head, bloody obvious, because I've done it for years. But what would happen? I'd come to the bin and it would be heaving. And then I'd go, oh, Matt, you haven't done the bins. And we'd just have an argument. And then he'd miss a bin collection. And you know how annoying that is, especially if it's the general waste. But what I began to realise, I never agreed with him the reason why he needed to do it. I never agreed that he was happy to do it, not that he, you might still think that, well, he should just do it. He should do as he's told. Well, yeah, it might be the case, but that doesn't make it so. He's still not going to feel that way. And when I sat down, having heard this, it's one of the first things I did. I sat down to him and said, can I just talk to you through the bin thing? And when I explained to him what I was looking for and that I'd had all these expectations of him, he said, oh, I had no idea. He said, I didn't even think about it. And yeah, I know about the bin, but I just thought if I miss it, it'd go down next week. It's no biggie. But when I explained it to him and we then agreed, so could you put a reminder on your phone? Would you be happy to do it every day and check it? No problem. He did it and he was happy to. And he did not like the fact that I was always giving him a hard time, because when I would go and just talk to him with expectations, he'd get immediately arsey, because no one likes being criticised, especially when it's unfair. And I know it's a silly example, but we do that sort of stuff every single day. Well, I say I think most people do that stuff every single day. I still do it. I don't sit here as some sort of shining light and shining beacon. I just, I'm a little bit more switched onto it, and I can certainly help other people. And I had a new client sign up last week, and we were talking work, but we very quickly got onto his marriage, and he very, very quickly understood that he had some crazy expectations of his wife, who was a stay-at-home mum. And I asked him if he'd ever actually talked this through with them, and he's like, oh, no. And then he told me over the weekend they had some really good conversations, because he just said, you know what, I think I have maybe not, I have these expectations of my busy day at work and just expect that X, Y, and Z is going to happen. That's not fair. And honestly, it sounds like it was even more powerful than I'm not going into marriage counselling, but it sounded like it was a really, really good weekend for him, just because they had expectations of one another. It's nuts.
And some of the simple strategies that you think we can apply, Oliver, what are your top ones that people can take away and start to work on? Okay,
so I think the first thing that I would always encourage people to look at, I mean, there is no specific order, but one of my favorites is looking out for what we call triggers. So that time when you next so if your issues is self-limiting beliefs, look out for them. Look out for those moments when you say, oh, I can't do that, or that's not for me, or I don't like that, or look out for the language linked to it, like trying, can't, won't. And I'm not asking you to do anything other than that, but if you notice it, that is a start. And the more you notice it, the more you'll think, well, why is that? And that would be the second thing. So when you could even write these down. You could even write them down, whatever works for you. But the main thing I'm just saying is actively go away now and listen to yourself and listen to the language, and remember the next time that you decide you can't do something, or you won't do something, or you decide, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, because that's another one. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And just have a look at it in your head. What's going on at that moment in time? Why aren't you doing the thing that is going to make a difference to you? And take it from there, really. Other strategies are doing something in small, sharp bursts. I mean, honestly, I know we said we wouldn't beforehand, Neil, we wouldn't go into books, but I do love The Slight Edge. I absolutely, it's one of the greatest things I could never forget, never forget Neil bringing that to my attention. That book makes it so simple. I'm not suggesting it's the best book in the world in terms of the way it's written. It's a bit longer than it needs to be. But if you have divulged all the information in that book, there is no excuse. You have everything you need to reshape your thinking and the actions you take on a daily basis, but also realize that you don't need to set the rules up of engagement really high. It's little tiny actions that you're looking to make, not about, you don't want to set yourself what we assume are goals, because that's another thing. People don't really know how to set a goal. They will set an outcome, and then they will struggle because they haven't set up all the actions that might be needed to reach that actual outcome, to turn it into a proper goal. And there's a really cool model called the GROW model, and there's others out there like it that help you. But we put ourselves under pressure because we like maybe weight loss. We'll say, I want to lose 2 stone. That's not a goal, but they'll say it's a goal. You can even go to certain companies that will help you with this goal, but you haven't set up a goal. You set up a trap because you've not given anything in place to really help this person. But if you think about, okay, so the outcome is I want to lose this amount of weight. What are all the things that I could be doing in actions? And how quickly do I think it's reasonable for me to achieve this? Or when is it the desired time I want to do it by? We can start planning our way through it. So that's the other thing. If you want to hit something and do something, you've got to plan it out properly. Else you're setting yourself up to fail. And if you don't then listen to the feedback, you're going to think, well, I can't do it. And we'll be right back where we start. So I think that's 3 really cool things that you could do.
And the planning is daily planning? Mornings, afternoons, planning what you do when you wake up. I mean, how detailed is the planning?
I think it's about, I don't think you have to prescribe it. I think it's about how quickly you take on new ideas and habits. So if you take like I've done a 90-day challenge, which a good few people actually now have signed up to. And I only ask people to take 5 actions. To start with, to get yourself building the momentum and the ball rolling. That doesn't necessarily need to be checked daily. However, some people like to go full out, and always an air of caution when you do that. There's no reason not to. If you've got a lot of things going, then you might want to do daily to-do lists. And what I think a lot of people in a corporate world deal well with is daily to-do lists, where you have a checklist. At the start of the day, before you do anything else, you write down all the things that you're going to do, and then at the end of the day, you just stop. And you will have probably coded them to make sure that the urgent stuff gets done. Next day, take the previous day's to-do list, shove anything over that hasn't been made, put that to the top of the next day's list, and then add the new things that you might want to do. That's a nice technique. It's not for everyone, but there's an example of what you could do if you feel that you need to plan it. And the third option is apps. There's loads of apps out there, but you don't want to have too many. I know 1 or 2 people in the room who are a bit of app addicts, and they'll pick up the next new shiny thing. But it doesn't really solve.
What do you use yourself?
What do I do? So for me, I've just got into a habit of doing things. One app that I am toying with at the moment, I'm playing with it because it came through with my phone contract, is Calm, and I'm sort of delving into meditation and relaxing music and things like that. I've got to be honest, I'm not getting on massively well with it at the moment. Meditation is never something I found easier. I find it quite hard to relax, but that's one thing I've tried. I know Headspace is another one that clients of mine use. But for me, my main go-to is Audible. I've got this new favorite technique of digesting information, which is having the book in front of me and listening to an Audible for half an hour to 45 minutes at a higher speed. And for some reason,
you've gone to an enormous speed, haven't you?
I didn't want to show off, Neil. I've gone a 3 times speed. So I've got the book in front of me, and I'm listening to the audible at 3 times speed, and I'm making notes. Every so often I have to pause, but it's helped me get through. Like my new favourite person at the moment is a guy called Daniel Pink. I look up there because I've got his 4 books, and I was able to get through 4 books of his in under 2 weeks and retain the information. And I've got a little book full of loads of notes here. For me, it's a game changer, but it's not going to be for everyone. And that's the thing, just doing things that work for you. So some people will need to do to-do lists. Some people will just say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and these are the 3, 4, 5 things, and this is the time I'm going to do it, and that will be enough for them. Or they'll set reminders on their phones. But it's whatever has worked for you in the past. It's a good thing to do. Look back and think, well, how did I manage to do something well previously? You should think about that. And if not, what if other people do? Ask people what's worked for them.
Yeah. There's a couple of comments here I know from, I was expecting them from Floyd and Rod talking about.
Thank you, Rod. Yeah.
Rod, certainly on the meditation front, has made a huge difference to Rod's life. And meditation isn't easy, but, it's practiced all over the world, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Thousands of years.
Yeah. I'd love to be, not be, I use the wrong words. It's not about being able to do it. As people who understand it will know, I only understand the theory of it. But it's just getting more comfortable with it. And I find that Calm app is helpful, but I expect I'm probably not going about it in the best way. So it's good. I've never had a recommendation, so I will look into Vincent.
Well, I know recommends this guy very strongly. I mean, it's one of the downsides of lockdown, isn't it? That actually we're doing all this stuff remotely. But I found meditation easy in a group, hard on my own. But that's reflection more than anything else.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that's the book that we're talking about, isn't it? The Dreaded Slight Edge.
It's wonderful work.
and I don't think it's in paperback, is it? It's a hardback book.
Yeah, you get hardback. It's not an Audible. You can get CDs, downloadable audio CDs for it on Amazon, but they're about 20 quid. It's I don't like to say that I have recorded them onto MP3 because this is recorded, but I do have them, but I don't give them out very often because that's a bit naughty. But what I do have is I will send you in. I've done an ebook that James Bussey put together very well for me, and Kate White and Ian White sort of did a nice little overview of a couple of things in this ebook, but included in that is a slight edge. It's just 4 pages, and if I'm brutally honest, 4 pages is enough. I like the idea of people reading the book because it shows the application of the rules, and you immerse yourself in it. But it isn't essential. That's my perfect world utopia. But what's in the 4 pages might just be enough to motivate people to read the book anyway. But you may get it from just that because they've done a great job of pulling out the most relevant bits. So I'll happily send that to you, Neil, and you can send it around to everybody.
Yeah, that'd be really useful. Because it's based on the parable of the tortoise and the hare, isn't it? Which is a few hundred years old.
Yeah.
And not lots changed, is it?
No, well, that's the thing, isn't it? We feel like everything's changed, and technology-wise and accessibility-wise, everything's changed. But in terms of the human brain and mind, not a lot has. And actually, there's just lots more fear out there. If we want to find it, there's lots of stuff to be scared of right now, and lots of stuff to hold us back.
Yes. So Clive's got an issue there in terms of how to factor in responses to immediate and urgent issues. I mean, do you get out of the wrong side of bed sometimes in the morning?
Yes, absolutely I do. And it's, again, in the past I wouldn't really have recognised it. I would just think that when a couple of things irritate me, that people are just being crap today. But now I'm able to catch myself and recognise and have a word and just think that, like taking an issue like Clive's got there's stuff that needs to be done. Absolutely. But if we revert to type and we fire from the hip, we've got to think, how's that going to land the other end with the person that we're sending it to? How's that communication? Yes, you might well be absolutely 100% right with how you feel about what they've done because you may have told them 100 times before, but the best way to get something out of somebody is never to shout or criticise or bawl. So having a word with yourself and recognising that air of responsibility you have, it's so easy not to do. It's so easy not to take the time to communicate it effectively and take a few minutes to delay. And yes, things are urgent, so it's tricky. But again, there's no excuse for not doing it in a way that is considerate. In a work environment, we might have a performance issue, which is an unrelated thing we need to deal with at another time. But in the heat of the moment, you're never going to get the best out of anybody if you fire from the hip, even when you know you're agitated. So it's about having that discipline and recognizing, okay, I'm not in the best place today. Am I overreacting to the issue? But also, if I want to get the best out of this, I really want to resolve the issue and fix it, then I have to communicate as effectively as I would any other time. So it's a discipline thing. It's something you learn. You're never going to get it right every day, but as long as you're aware of it, it also means that you can perhaps go back to the event afterwards and feed back to people why you didn't handle it as well as you would have liked. That is a lot. People really respect people who can come back and say, you know what, actually, I don't think I handled that so earlier. Back this morning at 9 a.m. when I got out of bed, I was a bit frustrated. I had these 3 whopping great big issues kicked off already and the day's barely started. However, I accept I could have handled it better. Yeah. And I appreciate how you've reacted. Language is powerful.
Yes. And I remember listening to the Chimp Paradox.
Yes.
I found it a very difficult book to read. In fact, I didn't finish it or get anywhere close to finishing it. But listening to it actually helped. And understanding it's your chimp. And you can't control your chimp. As you were saying, you just manage your chimp.
Yeah.
And actually,
absolutely.
It's quite a clever analogy, isn't it?
It is, and he does a good TED talk as well. So what I always encourage people to do is, if there's something you've heard about, someone's trying to do a book or an Audible, and that's not your thing, is there a TED talk? Because there's a lot of people. Like Michael Neal's done a great TED talk. There's Marcus Sheridan. He's done. If you look up a TED talk, he haven't done one, but there's another version. Brené Brown, Simon Sinek. All these people have done a really nice sort of 19 minutes, I think it is, isn't it? They get given overview of what they're talking about, and that will give you the gist, and that will give you an idea of whether you want to explore it further, or if that's enough, because it gets you to just think differently. Because you're right, it's a hard one, but actually it's really valuable if you have gone through it in some way and it's sunk in a bit.
And I do wonder in terms of as well sometimes where how we define success can be really tricky, can't it? In terms of, because we're in a capitalist society, it tends to be money, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's such a narrow measure of success, isn't it? And there's always going to be somebody who's got more than you.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's absolutely true. So something caught my eye. Wendy's just pointed out that they've now got Slight Edge on Kindle. So I hadn't noticed that before. So that's good. Thank you, Wendy. That's useful for me to tell clients about. Sorry, what were you saying, Neil? That just caught my eye. So
it's just how we measure success anyway.
Yeah, well, there's this, again, the recognition that money, financial freedom is a massive part of how we can achieve happiness, because it gets in the way, but it isn't the solution. And Daniel Pink in particular has really highlighted the fact that in a working environment, you can pay people more money if you want, but it's not going to make them feel any more fulfilled. They need to have purpose. They need to have a reason why. They need to feel. So I've got a client at the moment who is looking to leave a 6-figure salary job for a potentially 5-figure salary and a lot less, because he's got the financial freedom. He's already earned well for a long period of time, and it's not about that anymore. It's about the company he works for at the moment are not great, and the opportunity to go to this other company and do some good and make a real difference is more important to him. And that's when you start realizing, well, it isn't just about earning as much money as you can. And that's the thing. What does success actually look like? And I like the concept of a 10-year challenge in your head, where I'll sit down with a client and one of the first things I'll ask is, so we've been working together for 10 years, imagine. Where are you right now? What are you doing? What does life look like for you 10 years from now? And always it will be something to do with family. It would be a nice house or a nice holiday or something. But actually what it will be is the ability to go off and have that experience, of which money unlocks most of the time, but it's not the money. It's never, I want to be working really, really hard, working my nuts off for a 7-figure salary. It's, I want to be freedom, financial independence. I want to be able to go off on holiday wherever I want and have a second home here. Blah, blah, blah. And that money, yes, is the key component, because we're in a capitalist world, most of us. But that's not what they're searching for. They're searching for this lovely feeling, that alone time with their family, or that break from reality, or that need to choose when to work, all those sorts of things. Yeah. And then you realize it's not really the money.
There used to be a financial planner. He was a Buddhist who came over from Hawaii. He used to come over to the UK, and he used to use that technique with people as saying, well, what from a financial viewpoint, what's life going to be like in 3 years' time? And then he'd say in 12, and then he'd get it down to say, well, what do you want to do in the next 12 months? And the final question was always the killer. You've got 24 hours to live. What do you regret you never did? And that's never about a bigger house or anything. It's always about playing the guitar or seeing Niagara Falls or whatever it is. It's nothing to do with money.
Yeah, no, that's clever.
No, he was a very clever guy. So we've been rabbiting away.
Blimey, yeah, sorry, everyone.
No, I mean, it's been fascinating. And I think it's been brilliant. And I'm sure we'll get some great feedback. In the 2 or 3 minutes we've got remaining, Oliver is the sort of fellow that is very open and very helpful as part of his reason for being. So I would urge you to look at the website, which is Hill Coaching.
Hill Coaching Company, bit long, I apologise, .co.uk. But thanks to James Bussey, if you just put my name into Google, I normally come up top these days. So the way, just put my name into Google and you will get it. But yeah, hillcoachingcompany.co.uk. And it's just, I'm here to help. That's my gist. And I know that every so often someone will pick up the phone and want a bit more. And that's how I effectively get paid. But I'm more than happy to just help people. Happy, and every time I begin to work with someone, there's always a consultation conversation for a couple of hours, and there's no commitment beyond that. I do not want to feel like you're being sold to. I want you to feel that there's value for working with me. And for so many people, you don't need me because you can do this yourself, but sometimes you just need a little bit of a help and a nudge in the right direction, as I have with Neil. Neil's my coach, everybody. So being a coach, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't have my own. And for my sins, Neil is on my case on a fairly regular basis. That is very good.
Well, thank you. But I think Wendy's raised a point. Is the world going to be different? It is a chance for the world to be different, isn't it? After lockdown, to think about what's important in life and reassess things. And I guess a lot of us are going to be doing just that. But
absolutely,
And I would urge people to go to Oliver's website, the 90-day challenge, the podcasts. There's a huge amount of material there. I think that'd be great. And then and reach out to him on LinkedIn and look at his posts.
Yeah. And Wendy, there's an article that I've done on the impact of furlough, and effectively it's really tackling the mental health issue that we got coming around the corner when furlough really, if we're honest, it turns off on the 1st of August really, because when other businesses, most of them won't want to have to pay their bit of it. A lot of people will have got very comfortable with working from home. A lot of people will have been working through this period and have colleagues coming back. There's just so many problems. There's nothing to do with the furlough scheme. I don't criticise that at all, and I stay off politics. However, it's how companies have chosen to use it is going to have some massive issues, not least the wave of redundancies that may be coming as well. So there's a whole load of things. So I'd advocate anybody reading that article. It had quite a bit of traction on social media, so it must have resonated with a good few people. Yeah, no, thanks, Oliver. No problem, my pleasure. What we're going to do next week, I'm open to suggestions next week, but what occurred to me that as an idea that I would float is I would like us to share our best software tips. Because I've seen we've all used a lot of software now, more so than ever before, not just the dreaded Zoom. And I'd love to find an alternative to Zoom, especially after their antics over China last week. But I think we've probably all got software that we use, these little gems that are fantastic. Quite a few free ones. I saw one this morning. Somebody sent me an email saying, could we get together? And he had something called setmore.com, which is a free diary system. And so I had a quick look at that and think, blimey, it is free. And it looks a cracking system. So I think there's probably loads of those. And I wonder if actually we could have a session where we share. Because with this webinar, we've got the ability that you can go on screen if you want. Or you can just chat or send me the links beforehand so I can get some details and then we can share it via a webinar with some screens. I think we'd probably learn a lot from some of that. That was my thought. So let me know what you think. So we're bang on 11 o'clock after the hour. Thanks a million, Oliver. That was a really fabulous session. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And I've seen some really nice comments down there. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it. That was great. Yeah, no, it's been great. And so everybody have a great week and crack on. Let me know your thoughts. I'll email you all on the software idea and let's see if we can build that. It could be a really useful little session next week. So for everybody now, goodbye and have a good week. Bye-bye.